All right, so let's start. Our next speaker comes from a region that produces the highest number of patents per capita. It's called the brain of the Netherlands, or the Brainport. The Netherlands ranks third in the Global Innovation Index after Switzerland and Sweden. So we have a lot to learn from them. And one thing that stands out about the Netherlands, which I personally had a chance to visit, is the type of ecosystems that they create for innovation to happen. Welcome, Naomie.
Thank you. Oh, it's a bit loud. Okay, do I have a clicker? Oh, okay. So, hi, good afternoon. So I'm Naomie Verstraeten. I'm from Brainport Development, which is the regional economic development agency in the Brainport Eindhoven region. It's in the south of the Netherlands. I actually feel quite modest being here, although Anne just said that we, as the Netherlands, rank third. And I know this is going to be a fairly strange comparison to Estonia, but we are actually a really small region. We only have about 760,000 inhabitants, which is small if you compare it to other countries and other cities on the globe. So, Brainport Development, the economic development agency in our region, we have a board, and this is interesting. Our board consists of representatives from industry, from Philips, ASML, but also other businesses, small businesses and design businesses, but also knowledge institutes. And in our case, we actually have 3 levels of knowledge institutes in our boards. We have academia, we have applied sciences, and we have vocational education in our board as a member, and research institutes. And the last, of course, is our local government, the 4 mayors of the largest cities in our region. The chair of our board is always, this is statutory, decided and written down, is the mayor of Eindhoven. The central question of today is to explain the importance of innovation as an engine for economic growth, and to explain the role of the government in that. So what I will try to do, based upon our case in our region, which is very practical, to be honest, no academia, no research done on it, very practical, hands-on, I will try to explain the importance of government in our developments. So, I just told you, we are one of the 3 economic pillars within the Netherlands. We have 3 main pillars, actually. It's Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and us, the Brainport Eindhoven. We are the high-tech region, where we combine an enormous amount of private R&D and a very strong manufacturing industry with a really world-famous design sector. More important to our success is not this, but it is the way that the government and the industry and the Knowledge Institute cooperate with each other. The so-called triple helix cooperation, as we might say. Big companies, small companies, startups, but also fast-growing companies collaborate together. And the funny thing is that there is an intensity between this collaboration of all these companies and institutes. Because we believe that sharing knowledge means it is multiplying knowledge in an open innovation environment. So what we say is, we invent, we create, and we sell the products of tomorrow. So, if you look at this static behind me, you can see, and this is important, I'm going to watch for the gap, we have 2.5 billion on private R&D. Our public R&D in our region is only 3% of our GDP. This is also our Achilles heel. Because as everyone knows here, probably from academic side, it's important to have a balance between public and private R&D. So one of the things that we are really focused on is to get more public R&D to our region. So, let me start with the state level. I stated in the beginning that we believe that the role of the government in innovation is very important. If you look at the Netherlands, we have several policies in place, but the most important one, I guess, is our top sector policy. You could call it an industry or an enterprise policy. We have 9 top sectors in the Netherlands, and these sectors, basically the reason that they were chosen is because this is what we were strong about. The previous speakers of the IMF talked about smart specialization strategy. And because we have these sectors, we are able to specialize even further in that. The top sector approach underlines the link between innovation and export performance, and it foresees a central role for innovation policies and its instruments. The key objectives of the top sector approach in the Netherlands is leveraging business sector R&D and to create a greater coherence in government policy in support of business by simplifying the range of interventions. With this top sector, 2 instruments were introduced. One was called the Top Consortia for Knowledge and Innovation, TKIs as they call them, and what it does is promotes the development of public and private R&D consortia. But we also have a SME innovation support called MIT, not the MIT in Boston, but this is the MIT in the Netherlands. It promotes the participation of SMEs in top sector valorization. Previous speakers also mentioned that. It's not just about research, it's also about valorization, bringing into practice the knowledge that you have. In the form of collaborative R&D, feasibility studies, innovation vouchers, hiring of experts, networking, and coaching. Our national government takes innovation for growing our own enterprises, but also for attracting innovative companies very serious. This is why we have this top sector approach. So it's not just the instruments that I just mentioned, we also have fiscal incentives. We have 2 of them, which most foreign companies actually are quite satisfied about. The first one is the WBSO, and the second one is called the Innovation Box. The WBSO, the objective of that is to stimulate R&D by alleviating the wage burden for companies through tax reduction. The Innovation Box provides a special tax regime for foreign companies, but also for companies from the Netherlands itself. Our region is the largest user within the Netherlands of the WBSO, to be exact. We also have, in the Netherlands, an SME Plus Innovation Fund. And the fund is available for SMEs because we saw that we had a lack of venture capital. In all of Europe, actually, we have a lack of venture capital compared to the US, at least. So this is why this specific fund was created. As I said, government plays an important role in innovation. The author of the book, I don't know if you know it, The Entrepreneurial State, Debunking Public versus Private Myths, Mariana Mazzucato, but also Mr. Dasgupta earlier this morning, showed that many of the technological developments and innovations started by public funding. I can give you a very recent example in our region. During the crisis of 2008, the triple Helix partners in our region put their shoulders together because we wanted to keep the knowledge workers that were working in our region at that time. Because already in the summer of 2008, we realized that talent would be location factor #1, and that the battle of talent would be a serious one to tackle. So what we did is, we went to the national government, as a regional government, and we gave them a draft of what we call the Knowledge Workers Scheme. And it meant the scheme entailed that The knowledge workers did not have to be laid off by the companies, but what happened is the knowledge workers could be outplaced at the knowledge institutes and the universities. And one of the results from that, actually, is that 15 employees from the company called DAF, which is a trucking company, I don't know if you know it, but DAF, they went to work at the automotive faculty of the Technical University of Eindhoven. And in 2010, they designed the first hybrid electrical truck. Imagine if this scheme, this knowledge worker scheme, was not done, we would have lost the knowledge workers, and we would not have had this research been done. A second result that we saw is that our technical universities started working more and more with the large companies in our region, which resulted now in the fact that currently they are #1 in the world, a very small university, for collaboration with industries and for the publication of research and studies done with industry. And the last one, which is very interesting as well, as a result of this scheme, was that employees from these companies, DAF, ASML, OC, decided that they wanted to stay and work at the university for at least 1 day a week. And they asked their employers to pay for this 1 day that they were going to work at the university. What this has resulted in, too, is that actually our university gets to know and learn what the real problems are in the practice. So it's not academically thought of, because they are working in it. So again, this is how government can contribute to innovation. In our case, we see that innovation takes place to an important extent in urban regions, because companies find knowledge institutes and public partners, and they complement each other in terms of discipline. We have in our region, this is a map of our region, we have several innovation districts, as we call them. Campuses, we call them, but it's basically the same. And if you look at the characteristics of these campuses, there's a few things that are interesting about that. It is that I will discuss 2 of them specifically later on, but the characteristics. If you look at the characteristics, there's a few things that's interesting. It's research that's being done. It's startups that are at these campuses or innovation districts, but it's also fast-growing companies that are there. Because we believe that fast-growing companies are actually more innovative than startups. And the other thing is that there's always scholars, students. Because one of the things that everybody talks about globally is that there's a mismatch between education and global market, and labor market, sorry. So by adding students to these innovation districts, there are short lines to it. But I'll take you back to where it all started in our region. In our region, it all started actually with one company, which is called Philips. You probably all know it. They basically laid the foundation of our entire economic structure. Okay, here's a slide of Philips. Philips was founded in 1891 in Eindhoven. And they founded their first light bulb factory back then. From the beginning, what we saw is that they invested heavily in research and development. Research into improving the light bulb by using better tungsten wires. At the end of the last century, this led to research into other materials that generated other products, systems, new companies, and industries. Light bulbs, for instance, through radiation and X-ray tubes, to what we now know as Philips Medical. This is what we call our foundation. In the 1950s, the research that Philips did merged into applications of materials, and it was accelerated by developments in automation and mechatronics. This produced current world leaders, as you can see. ASML, how many of you know ASML? 1, 2, 3, okay. Did you know how many of you have a cell phone? Okay, this cell phone would not work if this company falls down tomorrow. Because what ASML does, the machines that they make lithography machines that make 90% of all chips in all electronic devices in the world. All of them. This is a spin-off of Philips. But another spin-off of Philips is VDL. This was a former employee of Philips that left Philips and went to work for itself and started doing assignments for them. It's a 5 billion euro annual turnover per year. And this morning, the IMF, the guys from the IMF, if I'm allowed to say it like that, they presented the case about Taiwan. They mentioned a company called TSMC, which is a large chip manufacturer in the world related to that. TSMC actually is a joint venture of Philips, together with ITRI, the research institute. So from an international point of view and our economic structure, as you can see, also the ties that we have globally have come forth from this foundation. So all was well until actually the mid of the 1980s, around the period of 1983. This is when actually Philips went into a large-scale reorganization, and they moved their productions to Asia because it was cheaper labor, and DAF went bankrupt at the same time. These were the two large employers in our region. 1/3 of all jobs were lost. But this was a very specific momentum in our region. And the reason that it was specific is because this is when we say the triple helix was born. At that time, the mayor of Eindhoven, the chair of the technical university, and the chair of the Chamber of Commerce stuck their heads together and said, we need to come up with an economic recovery program for this region. This is where they found each other, a joint agenda that they had. Our success is determined by our entire ecosystem. But the basis is actually the triple helix, and the driving force is actually the local government in our case. It's the cities that do that. As you can see, as of that moment, 1996, every 4 to 5 years, we develop a new economic strategy. Within this strategy, one of the things that is very important is R&D, is to support R&D and to support innovation, but also to support companies to grow within our region. Not just FDI attraction, foreign direct investments, but also have our own companies to grow. One of the reasons we do this is because we believe that if we grow our own companies, which are usually family-owned enterprises, it will not be that easily for other foreign countries to attract them. One of the examples is Singapore. We know that, for example, Singapore wants to attract many of our high-end manufacturers. But since they are family-owned enterprises, they are basically rooted within our region. This is why we invest in our own fast-growing enterprises. At this period in time, in 1996, this morning Anne said that Estonia has funding from Europe. At this, we did as well. Because in 1996, I told you about our top sector approach in the Netherlands, but in 1996, when we were in a crisis as a region, we did not have such policies within on the national level. So we too went to Brussels. And Brussels designated the southeast of the Netherlands, that's where we are located, as an Objective 2 region. And what happened is, to be able to apply for the grants, we needed to have co-funding. So the local government, they put money in a fund. This fund still exists until the day of today, and they contribute €5 per inhabitant at that moment. So they had 3 million euros as co-funding. In total, the stimulus program was about 180 billion euros that was invested in cluster projects in our region, projects and programs that helped for the economic recovery. But another thing that was interesting, what we did with the stimulus funds, is that we invested in our business districts, these innovation districts that Anne just told you about. In our ecosystem, we have many of them. One of them is called the High-Tech Campus Eindhoven. If I look at the period back from 1993 to 2000, we see that there is a certain economic growth happening. So it was working, the programs that we had in place. Between that period was also a very emotional moment for the region, because at that moment, Philips decided that they would move their headquarters from Eindhoven to Amsterdam. And if you are a one-company town and your only one company says bye-bye, this is very emotional, I can tell you. It was really heavy. So what happened is, again, this is where the government in our region took their position as creator. They negotiated a deal with the CEO of Philips, and they said that they wanted, actually, the physical laboratory of Philips, called the NOT Lab, to play an important role in the further development of the city, because they wanted the research to stay. They said, it is fine that you move your headquarters, but your R&D stays in Eindhoven. You owe us at least that. This was one of the smartest decisions that was made, if we look back in time. Nobody knew it at that time, of course, but it was, to be honest. And for Philips as well, because they benefited from it. Actually, currently, Philips Lighting is located there at the campus, their headquarters, and also Philips Medical is located there, and the research is done there. But the municipality, the benefit that the municipality had, is that it retained employment, actually. And they saw it as an opportunity. So, if I look at the next period, from 2000 to 2009, the region developed as Brainport Eindhoven as we know it now. It was more than just high-tech and more than just Eindhoven as a city. It became a whole region. A network economy and an internationally recognized knowledge region. Example of this is the high-tech campus. It was initially the research department as Philips, like I told you. But Philips decided to allow other companies to be located there in 2003. But what we saw was that other companies did not want to be located at this campus. It was a beautiful campus, they had a lot of clean rooms, they had a lot of facilities, but other companies were hesitant because they said, it's a Philips-owned campus. So the economic department of the city of Eindhoven applied for a grant at this local fund that I told you about. And the grant was for a 4-year investment promotion activity specifically for this campus, because there were only researchers there. Currently, there are 12,000 researchers working at this campus. At that time, it were 4,000, 4,000 to 5,000. But this program was heavily supported by government. Now, everybody's forgotten the role that the government had in this program. So again, what you see here is that the city, together with Brainport Development, took the role of creator and of shaper of potential new markets. At this campus, the preferred way of working is open innovation. And it means that campus companies share knowledge, expertise, R&D facilities, in order to be able to innovate faster, better, and more customer-oriented. The campus is not isolated. It's on the south side of the city, a bit outside the city center, but it's not isolated because the researchers work very closely, the researchers of the different companies work very closely together with the technical university. The campus currently has 125 companies located there. So, I told you we were a one-company town, and I told you that they left a lot behind for us, and they did a lot on R&D. But, so, if I translate it, I would say they left for us knowledge and space. This is Stripe S, this whole area there. Stripe S is actually the location where the former Philips factory buildings are located. After 2008, the financial crisis, we all know, our region once again had to show its resilience. At that moment, the spatial heritage from Philips proved important because we had many cheap square meters steeped in industrial past. This entire unit, so all these things, gotta watch out that I don't fall, the white block over there, factory buildings, they were empty. Philips sold it, and the city bought it. The city, together with the Social Housing Corporation, bought this entire premises because they wanted to keep the legacy and the past. So it was the ideal environment, this is what it turned out to be, for a new productive group of urban residents called the creative class. This is why we call this the Creative and Innovative Campus. It's an innovation district. It is to create a new economy, a new form of it. Also on this campus, what we saw is that there were large companies, Bosch is located there, Amazon is currently located there, but there are also startups and faster growing scale-ups, you would say, I guess, from the university that locate there. The buildings have been transformed. It is not just for work. That's the interesting thing about this innovative district. In this innovative district, there's a multi-functions. It is also for living and also for leisure. So there's events happening. But there's also many people living there. There are lofts, there are apartments, there's families living there. So it's really been changed. If you look at this picture, above, there's two of the chimneys. That is called Stripe T. That was another Philips factory premises. Just this October, this premises was added to Stripe S. With this addition, it means that Stripe S is not only the creative and innovative district, but they can also do prototyping, small prototyping. That's been added to it, manufacturing. Because the creative class, they not only want to design, but in our region, they also want to have small productions. Many of them actually used to go to Taiwan, because we have an international relation with Taiwan. And now they can do it in our region. We say that Stripe S is an ideal environment. Recently, in the Netherlands, research was done by the Netherlands Environmental Assessment Agency for strategic policy analysis in the field of the environment, nature, and spatial planning. They wanted to better understand which elements are important for innovation districts to flourish within ecosystems. And they did a study on 5 different innovation districts in the Netherlands. Not just in our region, but also spread all over the Netherlands. And they were in different stages of development, these innovation districts. And they came up with 6 key elements. The first one was, they say, innovation processes are location-specific. They found that the following factors play an important role in the development and growth. They saw that innovation districts often rise around sectors in which new technologies are developed and applied, a knowledge institute in the vicinity, and a good connection with local business or large company that has always existed And they saw that a geographical location plays a great important role. Proximity to an airport, for example, or a seaport, or a junction of roads or rail connections. In our case, specifically, proximity in general is important. But if you look at a geographical analysis of our region, you see that our very strong supply chain that we have not only works closely with the original equipment manufacturers that we have, but also with other regions within the Netherlands and quite closely with Germany. The second key element that they found was local bus and global pipeline. They saw that in a successful innovation environment, there is local dynamics that is fed by international connections. Local bus, they found out, has to do with the dynamics of face-to-face meetings. Apparently, with all the modern technologies that we have, face-to-face meetings are very important in creating innovations because people can see each other's emotions and each other's reactions. This is what they call local bus. So they say it cannot exist without a very successful innovation environment. A great example of this is the EIT Digital, the European Institute of Technology. The European Parliament decided that they wanted to create a counterpart of MIT in the US a couple of years ago. But as you know, we consist of several countries, so they decided that they would create an EIT under a specific team. One of them was digital ICT. And then consortia from different countries within Europe could apply to have a node, as they call it, or a hub of this facility. So it's not just in one country, it's in several countries and it's connected to each other. At this EIT Digital, located at the high-tech campus, large and small companies and researchers all come together. It's a European open innovation organization with a focus on innovation in digital technology. It has multiple locations in Europe, but it also has one in Silicon Valley. Each location is a hub where local, large companies, research institutes, and entrepreneurs are connected together, and they form an international network. The third one that they found is entrepreneurial dynamics. They saw that in a successful innovation environment, the entrepreneurial spirit is fed by an ambitious entrepreneurial ecosystem. What we see in our region, again, I'm going to share some of the practices, is that many regions that visit us and come to look at us as a best practice always talk about startups, but they never talk about fast-growing companies, their own growing companies, like I told you. So within our economic development program, we specifically focus on these fast-growing companies because, like I said before, we believe that they innovate much faster. And another thing is they are rooted in the region. So it's not just that we want to keep them, we also want to help them grow. For example, in our international program, what we do is we have created an integral approach in which we facilitate these companies in their international business development, which means that we will target specific companies from abroad, large original equipment manufacturers, and bring them to our region and introduce our fast-growing companies to them. So they don't even have to go abroad. We bring the outside in, actually. The fourth element that they found was urbanity. A successful innovation environment lies in a region that offers a diverse urban environment, and elements of this urban environment can also be found in the innovation environment itself. If I look at the high-tech campus Eindhoven, for example, one of the things in their Urbanity that you see is that they only have one location, which is called the Strip, where people can have meetings, where people can have lunches. So what happens is that all the researchers have to get out of the office buildings to have lunch. And what happens then is that the campus itself organizes 200 events during the year in which they try to connect people together to each other. And then people go outside and they connect. The fifth one that they have is branding. They say, they found, that an innovation environment has a strong brand and is being worked on in many different ways. If I look from our practice, our brand is called Brainport Eindhoven. Eindhoven is a strong brand with a DNA string based upon technology, design, and knowledge. This is also the way that the city brands itself. Brainport Eindhoven brands itself as a high-tech manufacturing region. And what we see is, because we're very consistent in this branding, we see that there's a lot of traction coming forth from it. And the last one they found was the governance of innovation. A successful innovation environment requires organization. In the beginning, when I started my presentation, I told you about the triple helix, about the way how our government works together with knowledge institutes and with businesses. This is important because it is a driving force. And earlier, someone in the audience, I think it was at that table, asked about failure. What if you fail when you make a decision? It was you, I believe. One of the things, if you look at this governance of innovation, is in our region, is that the city of Eindhoven, in their current coalition agreement, wrote down that failure is allowed. What does this mean? It means that when the city deploys projects that they want to execute, they are allowed to fail, because you never know upfront whether a project is going to be right or not. And because it was written down in the coalition agreement, what we've seen, because next year we're going to have local government elections, is that actually the city was able to be more innovative in their policies. One of the things in this specific coalition agreement was not just that failure is allowed, but the second thing was that they said they would hire a designer, because they wanted to implement design thinking in the entire way that the city works. Because also, many of the projects that the city of Eindhoven does are in triple helix consortia. So these are important ingredients for us. And I guess this is also what I wanted to share with you from our side, our case, practical, and where the government is very important. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you very much, Naomie, for... Thank you. Hello, hello. The microphone is not working. Thank you very much. Still not working. Hello. Well, I'll just speak without it. I guess everybody can hear me still. Well, it seems that after what you just presented, high-tech campus in Eindhoven has kind of evolved naturally. Do you see that these ecosystems have to evolve naturally, or do you think they could be also created artificially?
This is funny, because the research from the PBL that had the 6 key elements, actually one of the things that they saw when they made the analysis, and also if I look at the 5 most mature innovation districts in our region, they evolve partially naturally. You do learn from the key elements to try to balance it out and to work on all the key elements. But I don't think you can just make or create it. So I think it's a growth path that has to be done. Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the audience?
Hello. I know that you had some kind of experience about cross-border cooperation with Leuven and Aachen.
Yes.
What about this process? We are quite interested because we are trying to do something similar between Tallinn and Helsinki. Do we have something to learn from your experience?
Yes, thank you. Indeed, we are renowned for a cross-border collaboration called ELAT. It's a collaboration where the industry, but also the universities, because all of these three regions have university, decided that they should join forces. And we did. One of the best examples that we actually have, based upon this collaboration, is the Holst Institute. It's an open innovation research institute that does research in the pre-competitive stage. It's a collaboration between TNO, which is the National Research Institute in the Netherlands, and IMEC, actually, in Leuven. And another thing that we see, for example, is that the company ASML that I told you about works very closely with the University of Aachen. But the funny thing is, with this corporation, this cross-border, is that our university, for example, does not work together with the University of Aachen, because they work together actually in the Eurotech universities. So yes, it is very successful on projects indeed, and we share a lot of knowledge also about living labs with each other. There's a lot been documented that I can share with you if you would like on this collaboration. But some things just didn't work. Some things also failed, to be honest, in the whole process. So there's good and there's bad in this collaboration.
Any more questions from the audience? All right, thank you very much. Oh, there is one more there. Okay.
Good day, Jaak Raie, Science Park Technopol. Who pays the money for this district? And how it is operated?
For all of the districts, if you look at the high-tech campus Eindhoven, it's privately owned. The only money that the city paid for and the local government is actually for the IPA, the investment promotion program that we ran. The rest is all. If you look at the other districts, Strijp S was a different story. Strijp S, like I told you, the city, together with the Social Housing Corporation and a real estate developer, bought the main premises of Philips. At the other campuses that we have, they are all PPS funded. So there's always a combination in this. But the driving force for us, that is one of the lessons that we learned in these innovation districts, it has to come from both sides. So the government and the public side have to work together on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. So does anyone want to ask something else? No. Thank you so much, Naomie. We have a present for you. All right. Our next speaker, Mr. Uwe Kantner, he couldn't make it here, but he'll be here virtually. He's a member of the German Government Science and Innovation Committee, and the committee had an emergency meeting, apparently, at the Ministry of Education in Germany, and so he decided to go ahead and record his presentation because it was very good, so we didn't want to miss it. So we will see it on the screen.